Welcome to this year's Haddo Arts Festival, to our opening concert here live at the Haddo House Hall. It's a wee bit different, but we hope an equally unique and special celebration of the arts. Now, in a normal year, Haddo House Choral and Operatic Society would be giving the opening concert here, but due to the COVID restrictions, singing is not allowed. However, we look forward to welcoming them next year for a very special 10th anniversary Haddo Arts Festival. In the meantime, they've given us permission to use their beautifully restored Steinway grand piano for this concert. And what a wonderful concert we have in store, given by the multi-talented musician and broadcaster Richard Michael. Now, Richard is renowned for being able to improvise on any theme, in any key, and in any style. There's no one in the business that I know who's more enthused by music. And in fact, during lockdown, he's opened up the skill of improvisation to thousands of people online as a tutor in the Benedetti Foundation. So in front of a small, very live, very enthusiastic audience, all socially distanced, we're going to enjoy this wonderful concert given by Richard Michael.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Haddo, for giving me the chance to play it live and not in front of a screen as I've been doing for the past 4 months. So the title of the show is It's All Music, Folks. And there's something that all the 3 composers that I'm going to play to start this program have all got in common. And I'm going to just try and show you just a little bit of how this art of improvisation works. That was Paul McCartney's Blackbird, followed up with Bye Bye Blackbird. And I'm going to turn now to one of my favourite jazz pianists, and his name is Earl Garner. And Garner had a wonderful piano style. When he played the piano, his left hand sounded like the guitar. And the right hand was just a little bit behind it or in front, like this. If I put the hands together, it just doesn't sound right. It's that kind of wag. Yeah. And Gardner was famous for one particular tune which he wrote. And because of his inability to understand music notation, he had to get somebody to write it out for him. And it was called Misty. Now for the third composer, who has much in common with Earl Garner and Paul McCartney, his name is Django Reinhardt. And Django was mentioned in the musical press this past few weeks with the death of the great guitarist Julian Bream. Julian Bream really brought the classical guitar to British audiences, although when he studied the guitar as a student, he wasn't allowed to bring it in the main, well, he wasn't allowed to say that he studied the guitar, much the same as John Dankworth wasn't allowed to take a saxophone into the Royal College of Music. Fortunately, we're a bit more enlightened these days. But what drew Julian Bream to Django Reinhardt was the fact the man was an incredible guitarist. And Django had lost these fingers in a fire. So he only had these fingers in his left hand. And yet he had the most amazing facility on the guitar. And as a composer, who did he listen to? His favourite composers were, strangely enough, Ravel and Debussy. And so, I mean, this is how music works. This is what the title of the programme, It's All Music, folks, is all about. Because Django listened again and again to Debussy's prelude, L'après-midi d'enfant. And that opening, I'll play it in the key of nuage, gives you this harmony. It's the same as Star Trek. So, I mean, this is just how musicians, it's the same as Bye Bye Blues. The musicians hear these chords. But Django would take that language and it would come out in this tune, nuage. Immediately sounds French. So I'm going to play a little homage to Julian Bream, to Django Reinhardt, and I'm going to play at the beginning and the end a piece called Django, which was written by the leader of the modern jazz quartet, John Lewis, who was a huge fan of Django. And when Django died, which was in the early 1950s, died very, very young, this music was written for him. So I'm going to play Django, then Nuage, and finish with Django. And I hope you get a little bit of the mystery of this man's incredible music making. Django and Nuage. And of course, what Django Reinhardt had in common with Earl Gardner and had in common with Paul McCartney is that none of them could read music. And to me, that's quite an incredible thing. So they couldn't read music. What did they use? They used their ears. And through the ear, they just absorbed the influences of the time. And that really, I mean, when I'm teaching my students, you know, I'm saying, if you really want to play music, you have to listen to music. Recently, we saw the death of the great Scottish singer Annie Ross, aged, I think she was 90, who came to Fife 25 years ago and did a concert with my youth jazz orchestra. And the most important thing that she would say to the children in the band was, listen. She said, you know, when I was in my early adulthood, I knew Charlie Parker, I knew Dizzy, I knew Monk, I knew Duke, I knew them all. And I listened. And when I came together with Lambert, Hendricks and Ross, we went into the studio and recorded these amazing sing-a-bassy. She said, there were no parts, we just sang them because we all knew them. And so that in order to play music, you have to listen. Now, as a music student at what was the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, when I went there in 1968, I found life a little bit frustrating because the fact that I could play jazz really did work against me. Although, here's the irony, just 2 years ago, I was the principal external examiner in Tommy Smith's jazz course, examining some of my own students from Fife Youth Jazz Orchestra. How crazy is that? But I remember saying to the students, so before we started the exam, I said, listen, you have no idea how fortunate you are that you are here studying this music, that I was very nearly expelled for playing when I was a student. But as a student, I kept making these connections. And here's one. I absolutely adore Bach. You know, if favourite composers, it would have to be Bach and Duke Ellington, both up there. And it was a very simple saraband by Bach that really got me, it's this. I just adore playing that, but I got stuck on that second chord. To play over and over and over again. What is it? So then the academic bit kicks in, and you work out that it's a minor chord, but it's got this added bit in. So my way of explaining that to adults is it's a bit like going from a Pinot Grigio to a very good Barolo. Because you've got all these overtones in taste, and musically, these are just chord extensions. But my mind at that time went, what happens if I take that chord and place it in a tune I know? Now we call that copy and paste. Okay, so here's the Bach bit again. The second chord of Autumn Leaves uses that chord. What happens if you take Bach's chord and put it in there? Come back next week and I'll tell you. This is what happens. Instead of this, you get this. And you can move it down. And you can put a bit of Wagner, James Bond. Then you can decorate it. Duke Ellington. Bach. is exactly the same. This was never pointed out to me as a student. I was told, that is Bach, and that isn't. And it was made very clear that you were not to make these comparisons. But I couldn't help it, because my ear kept telling me, yeah, what happens? It's always that. I suppose as a child at Mackay Academy, not very far from here in Stonehaven, I would have been not a difficult child, but I always wanted to know why. Why does that work? And of course, the only way you really find it out is you experiment. You play and play and play. So I'll play Autumn Leaves, and I'll start with the Bach chord, and then we'll just see what happens. Because when you improvise, it's just like telling a story. But there's always a clear form. It's the beginning, middle, a little bit of a coda at the end, and then who knows? Sorry, JS, here it comes. must tell you just another little Earl Gardner story that popped into my mind. When he started recording in the late 40s and early 50s, it was before the advent of the 12-inch LP. So Gardner could only record 3 minutes at a time. And in one recording session, he started playing, and as he got up to the 3-minute level, he changed key and he went to a different gear, and the producer's going, stop, stop. Gardner kept on playing, he kept on playing, until it eventually stopped. And the producer went, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? It's 3 minutes. What's the idea? And Gardner said, I don't know, man. I just wanted to see how it was going to finish. And it's a great story because that's the essence of the creative musician. Now, I'm going to go back to just the very early days of jazz. and just explain a little bit about how it works. Because jazz was an amalgam of all sorts of music that was coming across from Europe, all over, and musicians began to piece things together. I suppose ragtime is but actually that's very straight, and to be played properly, it doesn't swing in a way that jazz musicians do. When it started as a popular piece, it should be played like this. But of course, jazz musicians got hold of it and then started to swing it. And so one of my students, some time ago, one of my classical-minded students said, the Maple Leaf Rag played it like that. And I said, well, how about this? Yeah! I don't like that. I was told. So, right, okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, we've all got our opinions. But this is how the music began to evolve. And at its simplest level, it was just a very simple left-hand pattern like this. But once you've heard it, it moves up. And it moves back down it. This is called the blues. And the right hand just plays. Because this is almost like going over the train. This is on the train. So the next step was to take that and to make it really sound like the railroad. And here's the train whistle. Yeah! Tracks, you're going to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Undeniably an American jazz sound. What's it got in common with Buxtehude and Bach? See, this is what fascinates me. Because I've read that Bach contacted Buxtehude, he found his Facebook page, and got onto him and said, hey man, I want to come and get some lessons. So Bach made the trip from Leipzig to Lübeck to study with Buxtehude. And Buxtehude, I'm certain, would have started by showing him just some basic cliches. Now in jazz we call these cliches licks. But I could almost imagine it starting something like, take a chord, take another chord, and take another chord, and improvise with your right hand. Then transpose it into the minor, where you've still got the 1 chord, the 4, and the 5, and you've now got Buxtehude would have said, now you go away and practice that and come back next week. Right? And your fees have gone up, by the way, right? And Bach would have come back next week. Transpose. And Buxtehude would have said to him, now sonny, we're going to do what we call imitation. Whatever you do with your right hand, you're going to do with your left hand. And then you're going to do with your feet. Get the idea? Now go away, come back next week. I'm going to show you how to do that in triple time. Okay. Buxtehude was said, now look, we've just had this new thing come in called equal temperaments. So unlike previous years, we're now going to play on C sharp. Okay. Up a semitone. Semitone. And I'm convinced that this is how Bach would have learned. The amount of preludes by Bach that start like that in some form or another, it's amazing. And yet they all sound different, but they have that background. So Bach would have been familiar with his scales. So, just to kind of show you what I mean, if somebody could give me a major scale, just any major scale.
B major.
Sorry?
B major.
B major, okay? Would you like to give me a scale? A minor scale?
C minor.
C minor, okay. Okay, so I will improvise just on the scale on B major, and then I'll go into C minor. And you can see my hands, but for those of you who can't, might not have perfect pitch, I'll cough when I get into C minor. But you know, this is the sort of thing that I amuse myself on Sunday mornings when the minister's late by just playing these, right? So with a B. Okay, okay. Now, just let me see if the middle pedal here works. It does, right? Okay, so listen, here we go. B major. Musical trickery, because in order to improvise, you have to understand the vocabulary of music. And what was the thing about there was Bach would have learned his scales. He would have known the major, just do it in C, the harmonic minor, and the melodic minor. But in jazz, we also use scales. All right, but they're a wee bit different. There's, if you take a 5-note scale, it's called a pentatonic. If you move it up one, play it in inversion, you get this. Up one again, this. Up one, you get this. Now, if you flatten the top note, you get what is sometimes termed a flattened pentatonic. Now, just taking that scale, I'll play it over my bass line. flattened pentatonic scale developed into the blues scale. And I must tell you, one of the absolutely delights that I've had over the past 13 years since I left teaching full-time in Beath High School in deepest Cowden Beath, I've been in virtually every primary school in Aberdeenshire as part of the Aberdeenshire Jazz Programme. So I've been all around this area, Pitt, Medden, and before lockdown, I was in Durris Primary School. And I had in every school I've been in, I've had at least 30 to 60 children all improvising on that scale and all getting totally involved in it. And if it didn't matter, if they couldn't read music, it just didn't matter. They tuned percussion instruments with the correct notes on them, and they very quickly learned which notes sound good. Now that scale transformed itself into the blues scale, which is this one. Sounds familiar? Gershwin used it again and again and again, because Gershwin would hang out with the jazz musicians. And so Gershwin was very friendly with Willie the Lion Smith, with Duke Ellington, and the Lucky Roberts, the great Harlem stride pianists of that time. And Gershwin took their language and he put it into his music. So here's how Gershwin, I'm going to play a little bit of Gershwin now, funnily enough. Because Gershwin at school, he was a complete pain in the neck, just to put it politely. He was anti-establishment. He didn't want to learn. Until one day, he heard his friend play the violin and fell in love with music. And it was, I think it was Melody in F by Rubinstein. I think that's what it was. Anyway, all of a sudden, Gershwin wanted to find out about music. He became obsessed with it. He became a total failure to his parents, who wanted him to be a doctor, a dentist, lawyer, somebody respectable, but not a musician. When Gershwin eventually left school, he got a job as a song plugger. So he'd sit in a room with a piano. Folk would come in and say, "Hey George, play that tune for me. I need it higher. No, a bit lower. I like it in the minor key." And he learned the mechanics of music totally by doing this, by being able to play whatever they wanted in any key. Somebody dared him to make a tune out of "Good evening, friends." So he took it on board. We all know that cliche. He took it on board and he wrote this masterpiece that just uses a wee scale. beautiful tune, but Gershwin wrote hundreds of them. Hundreds. Now, there was a time when Gershwin and Cole Porter were seen by the public as vying for each other as to, who wrote the best music. Their backgrounds are totally different because, well, Gershwin was largely self-taught. I come back to this thing about using your ear. His parents didn't have a lot of money, but Cole Porter came from a very, very privileged background. And he had an instinctive ability to write great lyrics. And the lyric of some of his tunes, they're just wonderful. He wrote his own accompaniments, and he became friendly with Ravel, as did Gershwin, and Ravel told both of them, I can't do it in French, but what he said was, do your own thing, man. Do your own thing. You'll make more money do that than writing this symphonic stuff. And so, the music of Cole Porter, harmonically, it's fascinating. But I'm going to tie it in with with a little bit of Vaughan Williams. So again, here's the connection. So one of the things I love about Vaughan Williams, particularly playing in church, is the walking bass. So the bit interests me. Happily sitting playing away there, making it all up, changing key. I play in a different church every day. I get sacked all the time. But a great jazz pianist called Lenny Tristano developed this walking bass to an unbelievable degree. He was blind, and he kind of came somewhere between the swing, bebop, and modern. It's almost impossible to define, but he was able to put these incredible bass lines. So I'm going to play two of my favourite Cole Porter pieces. You'd be so nice to come home to, and What Is This Thing Called Love? And in the first tune, I learned it off a Dudley Moore LP. Because when I was at school at Mackay Academy, being totally bored out of my skull with every subject except music, I had a brilliant music teacher who came to Mackay called David McGinnigal, who then left Mackay Academy to work at the college in Aberdeen. And David McGinnigal introduced me to the music of Dudley Moore, and it absolutely changed my life. And I played this record over and over and over again, and I still love it. So the first bit will be a bit like Dudley Moore, and the second, when I play What Is This Thing Called Love, just listen to the bass line and follow the tune. And again, I shall be very interested to see what happens. called Porter, they're played in the style, first of all, of Dudley Moore, and secondly, by, where's his name was? By Lenny Tristano, yeah. When I was, I think in my 5th year at school, I bought this record by the great jazz pianist Bill Evans called Alone. And I took this home, it was a solo piano record, took it home and put on the first track, which is Here's That Rainy Day. And my brother, who had perfect pitch, that means he could hear, he knew exactly what key it was in, said, "Stop." He said, "It's a dud. You've been sold a dud." He's playing in the key of B. Nobody plays jazz in the key of B. It's either flat, he's playing in C, or it's sharp, he's playing in B flat. So we listened and we checked it out. B. Okay, spent all that money. Before I take it back to the shop, let's listen to a bit more. Well, it changed key. It went into G. And then it went into E flat. And these two teenage boys, we were just amazed by this. We think, now, we should have got out a lot more as children, because it's a bit unnatural, teenage boys sitting around. But this is how music obsessives work. So for weeks, months, we played this record over and over again, so it was so badly scratched you could hardly hear it. So what did we get out of it? We actually taught ourselves harmony, because we had to find out how it worked. And my brother and I, get this, we'd play this game. One of us would play a chord on the piano, the other one would be in the kitchen, and I would go, he would shout, B major 7, C sharp half diminished, E flat major 7, and then we'd swap over, and we'd F sharp major 7, haven't done that one yet, it's a G major 7 with a sharp 4, oh, yeah. And we would do this and we were always vying with each other to see who could recognize these chords. Yeah, we should have definitely got out a lot more. But the record in question just transformed us. That if you buy the sheet music of Here's That Rainy Day, it sounds like this. Does this in the key of B. It's the same tune. And he finishes it by doing this. This is the magic bit. Yeah, off in a different key. Well, whoa, this was amazing. So when I'm playing in church, again, I specialize in confusing congregations. I take that modulation, and often during the offering, I'll play a beautiful tune like this. Okay, so I'm going to use Bill Evans' trick, right? So I'll start to modulate down major third. And I tried to explain this to a group of amateur organists a few years ago, and you know, they're all getting obsessed with it. Where do you put your thumb? Where's the finger? I said, look, the important thing is, it's the colour. It's the colour of the harmony that makes it enriching. And the only way you're going to discover this is, how do you describe a curry to somebody? Can't you eat it? How do you say the difference between, you know, a lowland malt and, you know, a Lafroig? You have to taste them. So when you're playing, you have to just figure out these chords, and gradually you build up in your head what they sound like, so that when you play, it just sounds like, it's just like speech. So very soon, I'm going to ask you, once I've played this and one other selection, just for some questions, and I will happily deal with anything at all. But here's that lovely tune, Whaley Whaley, in the style of the Lens. In the key of G first. was curious to see how these things end up myself. So I hope that gives you a little flavour of just how it's all music, folks. The biggest mistake that people of my generation made, I think, as teachers, was to put everything into boxes. Say that that's classical, that's rock and roll, don't go near that. That's folk music, don't go near that. That's don't even think about that. And it's absolutely crazy because it is all music. And I hope through this past hour or so that I've been able to show you just how you just pick and choose. It's like learning language. You just gradually fit it all together. So before I play my last selection, I'd just like to ask if there are any questions at all, and I'd be delighted to respond if I can.
How do you find when you tutor online with the Benedetti Foundation? How do you find the students respond to your teaching online?
Okay, as Jamie has just referred to the fact that I teach on the Benedetti Foundation, and I try and get all the Benedetti string players to improvise. What's interesting there is that very few of the string teachers improvise. So their comments have been very interesting. Most of the time they're saying, I didn't realise it was as simple as that. And Nicola Benedetti herself, I took the liberty of taking her recording of the Lark Ascending and taking it apart and showing how it was exactly the same. Davis, Vaughan Williams, Paul McCartney use exactly the same material. Now she plays it beautifully, and I would never say to her, "Do you realise that it's just an E Dorian scale that this is based on?" But the jazz musician just hears it that way, and all through my musical life, it's been all these chords, harmonies, feels, grooves that are out there come in here. And eventually, they begin to come out as you. I say to a lot of my students, okay, I've got good news and I've got bad news. What's the good news? Good news, anybody can do this. Really? Anybody can do this. What's the bad news? It's going to take you a lifetime. But you'll enjoy every minute of it. You'll never be bored. You'll always want to find out more, because I want to find out more. Because in order to teach my students, I've got to be motivated. And because there's so many musical things that I cannot do, that I want to do. Okay? So 4-part fugue with the feet. Come and hear me next year. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wondered, where did this separation between the different genres of music come from? Because Bach used to write folk dances or dance suites, and Vaughan Williams takes folk tunes and elaborates them. So where did it come from?
Sure, okay, so the question is, how did all these different genres came about? Well, people love to put labels on something. And my label is, when I was a music teacher, that's a jazz man, that's a jazz man. I said, well, I'm not. I'm a musician. I happen to feel very comfortable about improvising. To which the usual response was, well, it's okay for you, you can do this. To which my response is, do you think I just suddenly woke up one morning able to do this? I've spent a lifetime learning to do this, and I'm fascinated by it. And you go and listen to my students. A lot of Tommy Smith's big band are ex-Fijo players. When he talked about Annie Ross, our bass player was ex-Fijo, and he'd just come off the road with Kylie Minogue, and he said she wasn't half as much fun as playing in Fife Youth Jazz Orchestra, and went with Annie Ross. And again, didn't see any difference in pop music, jazz music, it's music. So I think it's just convenient for people, I have to say, examiners, to label things, but it's not how musicians look at it. Anything else?
Is there any composer that just doesn't work, that you can't do?
Sorry, is there any?
Have you ever come across a composer that you just can't do it, you can't play it?
Very rarely, because what makes a composer is the fact that they have got their trademark licks, as I would call them. So one of my friends is a great French organist called Charles Ballier, and I did a concert with Charles at the St Andrews University 2 years ago, with also the great Dutch organist Siets de Vries, each of us improvising. And Charles said, when I was a student, we learned to improvise in the style of Stravinsky. So we would go. And so this is great fun to do on the organ. You'll empty the place in minutes. If I want them out the road on a Sunday morning so I can get home to watch a test match, I play this. Full pedal, everything. So yes, there are very few composers that, if you know their music, that you can't improvise, because it's what makes them unique. Like Mahler's the kind of Jewishness, you can hear that in his music. So you can bring that out in scales. Vaughan Williams is the fact that he uses the Dorian scale a lot. Delius, harmonic richness. Ravel. You could go on. It's all out there, and you've just got to get it in your ears. My friend, the great American saxophone player Dave Liebman, said, music, it's the 3 H's. You need each one of them. The head, the hands, and the heart. If you miss out one of these, you're listening to a machine. When you listen to all 3 coming together, you're listening to a musician who's got something to say. Mistakes and all. And all my students know the 3-word mantra, mistakes are cool. The only way you learn, and the only person I've had who's disagreed with that on a jazz course, out of the thousands of people I've taught, said, Richard, I just can't follow that, mistakes are cool. Why not? It's my day job. What's your day job? I'm an orthopedic surgeon. Okay, right, I've got it. Right, yeah, that's fine, it's okay. Any other question? Anything at all? Okay, I'm going to finish by playing music which is very dear to me and to my wife. Because when I met Morag, we were music students together, and I started coming to her home in Kirkcaldy. Her dad was a real organist, somebody who really could play it, not mess about in the way that his son-in-law does on Sundays. And my father-in-law, Duncan McIntyre, always at weddings played My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose. And in my generation at school, we were force-fed buns. I wasn't having any of it. Then I discovered the melodies. Love them. So I'm going to finish by just forgetting all about the other jazz musicians and just play these wonderful tunes, which I know you will know. one more. Okay, all right. Little finisher. Back to Gert. Hey, Jamie, why don't we do something together? Oh, come on. Let's do the art. I got
With my mask on?
yeah, with your mask off. Come on. Yeah.
We'll do...
Let's do. I tell you what. Why don't I fall in love first, and then into I got rhythm. Okay. No rehearsal. Well, we just played this. We had a bit of fun earlier. Okay. Jamie's one of my favourite singers, and it's great what he's doing just now with Harry Lauder. Yeah. Okay. So here's just a couple of beautiful tunes made famous by Nat King Cole and George Gershwin.
When I fall in love, it will be completely, or I'll never fall in love. In a restless world like this love is ended before it's begun, and too many moonlight kisses seem to cool in the warmth of the sun. When I give my heart, it will be completely, or I'll never give my heart. And the moment I can feel that you feel that way too is when I fall in love with you. I got rhythm, I got music, I got my girl who can ask for anything more. I got daisies and pastures, I got my girl who can ask for anything more. Oh, man, trouble, I don't mind him, you won't find him round my door. I got starlight, I got sweet dreams, I got my girl who can ask for anything more, who can ask for anything more. Haddo Arts could not present this year's festival without the generous support of their funders. In a normal year, significant and vital additional income from ticket and programme sales would supplement the grant and sponsorship funding. However, this year's virtual festival will be available for free, so please give what you can to enable them to carry on planning and delivering arts events at Haddo by visiting www.haddoarts.com and clicking on the donate button to give online. Or send a cheque payable to Haddo Arts, to Haddo Arts Administrator, the Estate Office, Mains of Haddo, Tarvis, Ellen, AB 41 7LD. Thank you.